With communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it. A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory, and now I got to deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
Bill Maher is still on the warpath, against woke culture, torching it for denying reality and living in a fantasy land. The unapologetic comedian who has never been afraid to scorch his own side took aim at the left and the DNC with a verbal flamethrower that left scorch marks on their carefully polished image. Maher called out the delusions, mocked the double standards, and stripped the woke crowd of their favorite shield, self-righteousness. The result? Shock waves ripping straight through Democratic circles and a firestorm they can't just cancel away. This isn't comedy, it's a reckoning, and Maher is making sure everyone feels the heat if you're part.
If you're part of today's woke revolution, you need to study the part of revolutions where they spin out of control because the revolutionaries get so drunk on their own purifying elixir, they imagine they can reinvent the very nature of human beings. Communists thought selfishness could be cast out of human nature. Russian revolutionaries spoke of the new Soviet man who wasn't motivated by self-interest, but instead wanted to be part of a collective. No, it turns out he wanted to be on a yacht in a Gucci tracksuit holding a vodka and a prostitute. Not standing in line all day for a potato.
Maher started by tearing into what he calls a fundamental sickness of the far left, their obsession with out-of-control woke policies. He didn't sugarcoat it. According to him, the left's fatal flaw is their constant desire to reinvent human beings, as if biology, common sense, and human nature can just be rewritten by hashtags and policy memos. Maher argued that this endless quest to force people into some utopian mode is why they keep losing ground, because at the end of the day, humans will always be humans. You can't legislate reality out of existence, no matter how many slogans you chant. And yet time and time again, the woke crowd gets drunk on their own fantasies of social engineering, blind to the backlash they create. The result, policies that collapse under the weight of their own delusion and a Democratic Party bleeding credibility. Maher didn't whisper this. He lit it on fire.
The problem with communism, and with some very recent ideologies here at home, is that they think you can change reality by screaming at it, that you can bend human nature by holding your breath. But that's the difference between reality and your mommy. Lincoln once said that you can repeal all past history, but you still cannot repeal human nature. But he's canceled now, so him.
Right? Humans are far more complex and nuanced than the far left gives them credit for. There's something to celebrate about diversity. Real diversity, not just the surface level kind they obsess over. We're diverse in our backgrounds, our bodies, and most importantly, in how we think. That's what makes humanity vibrant. But try telling that to the woke brigade instead of embracing differences in. They demand conformity. Step outside their narrow script, and you're branded, shamed, and dragged through the cancel culture machine. It's not tolerance. It's authoritarianism dressed up as progress. They preach inclusivity, but practice exclusion the moment you question their dogma. Maher's pointing out the obvious. True diversity thrives when people can disagree, debate, and still coexist. But the woke crowd doesn't want debate. They want obedience. And when you refuse to bow down, they don't argue with you. They tried to
Yesterday,
raise
I
you.
asked ChatGPT, are there any similarities between today's woke revolution and Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution of the 1960s? And it wrote back, how long do you have? Because, again, in China, we saw how a revolutionary thought he could do a page-one rewrite of humans. Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds: old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah, who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being. A lot of pointing and shaming went on. Oh, and about 1 million dead. And the only way to survive was to plead insanity for the crime of being insufficiently radical, then apologize and thank the state for the chance to see what a piece of you are.
Cancel culture, the crown jewel of woke. Insanity. Maher ripped into it with both fists, mocking the left obsession with silencing rather than debating. According to him, the new pastime of woke warriors isn't solving problems. It's hunting down anyone who steps out of line and tossing them on the digital. One wrong word, one offbeat joke, or even a 10-year-old tweet, and suddenly you're a villain unworthy of a job, a platform, or even a second chance. Maher blasted this as not progress, but regression, a childish, authoritarian impulse to destroy rather than persuade. He reminded them that societies don't advance by punishing dissent. They advance by challenging ideas. But the woke mob doesn't want challenges. They want obedience. And if you don't bend the knee, they'll gleefully try to end your career, your reputation, and your life online. Maher didn't just call it out. He torched it.
Listen to this story. There's a law professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, named Jason Kilborn, whose crime was that on one of his exams, he used a hypothetical case where a black female worker sued her employer for race and gender discrimination, alleging that managers had called her two slur words, the type of real-world case these students might one day confront. And knowing the extreme sensitivity of today's students, he didn't write the two taboo words on the test, just the first letter of each. He was teaching his students how to fight racism in the place where it matters most, the criminal justice system. But because he merely alluded to those words, again, in the service of a good cause, he was banned from campus, placed on indefinite leave, and made to wear the dunce cap.
I remember Professor Kilburn's story vividly because it perfectly captures the madness we're living in. His university didn't just slap him on the wrist. They dragged him through 8 weeks of mandatory sensitivity training and forced him to write 5 essays on self-reflection, all for the unforgivable crime of stating a simple fact about the real world. Think about that. The man spoke reality, and the woke establishment treated it like heresy. This is where we are, a culture so fragile, so hypersensitive that one honest observation can trigger a bureaucratic inquisition, and it doesn't stop in classrooms. That same suffocating pressure seeps into everyday life, forcing ordinary people to tiptoe through conversations like they're walking on eggshells, even in their own homes. The woke left doesn't just want to control public speech. They want to colonize private thought. It's not sensitivity. It's censorship, and it's chilling.
Yes, we do have our own Red Guard here, but they do their rampaging on Twitter. Here's a cute example from a couple of years ago. The banjo player from Mumford & Sons tweeted that he liked a book that apparently had not been approved by the revolution. So, of course, he had to delete the tweet, then take time away from the band. Oh my God, you mean this could have affected Mumford & Sons? And then the cringing apology, I have come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Pain? From a book? Unless he hit the drummer over the head with it.
The left assault on Winston Marshall was nothing short of disgraceful. He was a musician, a banjo player, not a Politician who simply endorsed a book by Andy Ngo. That's it. He didn't storm a stage. He didn't hurl insults. He didn't burn a flag. He tweeted about a book, but the woke left couldn't tolerate that tiny flicker of independent thought. They came for him with the same venom they reserved for actual criminals, demanding he be punished until he bent the knee. And, under the crushing weight of the mob, Marshall was forced to take time away from his band and issue a humiliating apology. This wasn't justice. It was bullying, plain and simple. The left claims to champion free expression, but the second someone strayed from their script, they unleashed the torches. Winston Marshall's only offense was curiosity, and for that, the woke mob tried to destroy him.
There was once a very different musician named John Lennon who wrote a song called Revolution. And people who didn't really listen to it thought it was a rah-rah call for revolution. No, it was the opposite. The lyrics are, you say you want a revolution? Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't gonna make it with anybody anyhow. There's a guy who understood how good intentions can turn into the insane arrogance of thinking your revolution is so fucking awesome and your generation is so mind-bendingly improved that you have bequeathed the world with a new kind of human. You're welcome.
And right there lies the heart of the problem. The woke left genuinely believes they are the most advanced, most enlightened, most morally superior beings walking the planet. In their minds, they've evolved beyond the rest of us mere mortals, and therefore it's their sacred duty to dictate how we think, act, and live. They appoint themselves the referees of morality, the arbiters of taste, and the guardians of truth. They think they get to decide which opinions are acceptable, which songs are safe to enjoy, which comedians you're allowed to laugh at, and which books you're permitted to read. Step outside their narrow orthodoxy, and you're branded ignorant, hateful, or worse. Yet, here's the irony. Most of their lofty proclamations collapse under the weight of basic common sense. They don't make society freer or smarter. They make it more fragile, less tolerant, and utterly disconnected from reality. 8. We all witnessed the disaster that came from the anti-common sense claim that you can be healthy at any weight.
Communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it.
Sounded empowering on social media, but reality quickly proved otherwise. Obesity is no small issue. It's linked to heart disease, diabetes, and strokes. And according to the CDC, nearly 300,000 Americans die every year from obesity. Related conditions. That's not fat shaming. That's cold, hard fact. Yet, the woke crowd pushed the narrative. Anyway, shaming doctors, silencing critics, and pretending biology could be rebranded with hashtags. The tragic fallout. People who desperately needed real health guidance were handed false comfort instead, and lives were lost. And just as quickly as the evidence piled up, the woke mob abandoned that sinking ship and moved on to their next crusade, ready to infest another corner of culture with their delusions. The pattern never changes. Deny reality, wreak havoc, then run.
A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory, and now I got to deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
It's almost laughable when you look at the kind of debates dominating headlines today, with the rapid advancement of technology, especially artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and space exploration. We should be engaged in big picture conversations about building a balanced, sustainable, and forward-looking society. We should be tackling questions about ethics and AI, how to prepare workers for a changing economy, or how to harness innovation without destroying privacy and freedom. But no, what does the woke crowd want us? To waste our time debating gender and sex, basic biology that has been understood for millennia? Instead of advancing society, they drag it backwards, obsessing over pronouns, redefining words, and forcing ideological conformity onto issues that should be rooted in science and common sense. It's not progress, it's a distraction. And while they argue over what woman means, the rest of the world is racing ahead. This is the left's woke priority list. In the end, Maher's war with the woke crowd isn't just comedy, it's survival. Is exposing a movement that cancels musicians for reading books, bullies professors for speaking facts, and preaches healthy at any size while ignoring deaths tied to obesity, a movement that calls itself tolerant but silences diversity of thought, pretends biology is up for debate, and demands obedience over truth.